can be confusing to buy pork butt sometimes, as it often comes in two pieces. One piece, which is the butt, and another piece, which is the shoulder. It can also be confusing because the pork butt is not actually the rear end of the pig and is located right above the shoulder. The main way to tell a difference between the two cuts is that the butt is square, whereas the shoulder is more triangular and has a piece that sort of hangs off of it. I smoke the butt and shoulder the same way, and in this video, I walk through the process using a pork shoulder and talk about which cut produces the juiciest pulled pork. On this particular shoulder, I didn't do any trimming, and there usually isn't much trimming that needs to be done. I like using mustard as a binder for my rub. It doesn't change the flavor much and allows the rub to stick. This rub is just something I mixed together myself. It has equal parts salt and pepper, onion powder, garlic powder, smoked paprika, and a bit of cumin and cayenne. This is more of a savory rub, but you can experiment with whatever flavors you like and make a rub that's more savory or sweet. Before I start setting up the grill, I get my coals started so that they get nice and hot. For cooking pork shoulder or butt, I like using the snake method because it creates a nice even temperature throughout the cook, and you don't have to worry about adding coals or maintaining the heat as much. Once you get the vents adjusted correctly, it should maintain a steady temperature throughout the whole cook. The coals don't have to be too organized, but I just like to line them up just so that I know they'll be consistent. Then I add a few hickory chunks on top just to get that nice smoky flavor. Changed out my water pan here just because I realized the other one leaked. Putting a water pan underneath the meat helps to do two things. One, it just keeps it nice and moist, and it also helps to catch any juices that drip down, helping with cleanup. Once the coals were hot, I added them to the grill and waited just a few minutes for the grill to get up to temperature. There are four main steps to cooking the pork. First is to cook to an internal temperature of 160 degrees. Step 2 is to wrap the pork in foil and put it back on the grill. Step 3 is to cook to an internal temp of 200 degrees. Finally, you can take the pork off and let it rest for around 30 to 60 minutes. I try to keep my grill at around 260 degrees, but anywhere between 250 and 280 will work. I make sure the vent is at the opposite side of the coals so that the smoke can come up and over the pork, getting in as much flavor as possible. As the charcoal burns around, just rotate the lid so that the vent stays on the opposite side of the hot coals. About every hour and a half, I check on the pork and spray it with a 50-50 mix of apple cider vinegar and water. You can just use water, but I like the flavor that the vinegar brings. I also usually rotate the pork at least once so that it cooks nice and evenly. Once the internal temp reaches 160, it's time to wrap. I used 2 sheets of heavy-duty aluminum foil and gave the pork a few spritzes before wrapping it up. The pork went back on the Weber, and now we just have to wait until it reaches 200 degrees. Once it hit 200, I took it off and brought it inside to rest. Make sure to have it in a bowl or pan so that you can catch all the delicious juices that flow out. The snake method worked out great, and when I pulled the pork off, the end was still burning. The total cook time was around 10 hours. I usually unwrap the foil to let it cool, otherwise it can take quite a while. If you're done earlier than you expect, you can always leave it covered and it will stay warmer longer. After around 45 minutes, it's time for the most exciting part, tearing into the pork and pulling it apart. This is where you can see the main difference between a pork shoulder and a pork butt. A pork butt has more marbled fat, which produces much juicier results, but the pork shoulder isn't too bad itself. There are some leaner parts to it, but it also has its fair share of juicy meat. The pork butt is definitely the superior cut, and given the choice, I would always choose it over the shoulder, but they can both produce great results. Overall, the pork butt is the best cut, but both the shoulder and the butt can be smoked the same way, so whichever one you choose will provide you with some mouth-watering pulled pork.